Hello, and welcome to the Exponential Growth Podcast, powered by Analyst Investors. I'm your host, David Olivencia, co-founder of Analyst Investors, and a passionate advocate for leveraging innovation and technology to drive success. Let's get started. This is Exponential Growth. I also want to give gratitude to Salvi Media. They're the founding sponsor of the podcast. They're a premier executive content agency dedicated to crafting exceptional content and strategies that elevate companies' brands and their executives. They're creators of the Emmy Award-winning CEO series. I think many of you have seen that. We've also featured one of my portfolio companies, Analyst Investors and Hallow, on their CEO series. And they've had in-depth interviews with CEOs talking about their personal journeys and business experience. The CEO series can be found on Cheddar, Entrepreneur Magazine, Reach TV, and really want to thank Salvi Media for their support of the podcast. You can also follow them on social media, as well as they have a podcast studio in Chicago. Join them as well. So again, thank you, Salvi Media, for making this podcast possible. Today, we have a very special guest, somebody who's an icon and a pillar in the tech industry, in the Chicagoland area, in the board space, a dear friend, Maria Wynne. Maria, welcome to the Exponential Growth Podcast.
Thank you, David. It's great to be with you today.
Excellent. Well, hey, so, corporate board member, CEO in a couple different spots, and a tech executive. And just a little bit more on the background, right? Just the thumbnail, and I'll have you fill it in. But, you've had leadership roles. You're on the board of the Federal Home Loan Bank of Chicago. You were the CEO of Leadership Greater Chicago. So like a leader among leaders, CEO of the Girl Scouts. And then really the core part of like this exponential growth is what you've done at Microsoft as a P&L executive there at Microsoft, almost $1 billion that you were in charge of there at Microsoft, really one of the world's leading companies and technology companies. And also starting off your career at Xerox, where you also had some great P&L responsibilities. So broad tech, broad leadership, and board experience and governance experience that we're going to dive into here. But Maria, what we always do in these podcasts is we like to start out with, it's like the corporate side and everything, but let's just give everybody, who's Maria Wynne? Tell us a little bit about your story, your journey, where did it start out, how just tell us from the beginning, tell us your story.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And thanks for this invitation. I'm really thrilled to be here. So I was born in Sacramento, California, but I was actually raised in Bogota, Colombia, from the age of 2.5 to the age of 15. My mother was Colombian. My dad was part Colombian, part Welsh. That's where the Wynne comes from. That's the origin of that. And we returned to the United States when I was 15. I was going into my last year of high school when we got here, after my dad's corporate transfer brought us back to the United States. So we lived on the East Coast for a couple of years and then moved into the Chicagoland area. And while I've lived in and out of it, it's basically become home over the years. But I think.
And what corporate was it that he was a part of, if you don't mind?
It was part of Mobile Chemical and Mobile.
Oh,
and ran
okay.
Mobile for South America, and then came to the United States doing strategy at the headquarters in Manhattan. And that was his career. And then later on, he went into he was called into the outplacement business to run the big merger of Continental Bank when that was changing and all of the bank mergers were going on. And then he had his own company. So he was, yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah, and he wrote books. He wrote children's books and business books. So he was always along with running marathons. So
never a dull moment.
My mom and my dad, there was never a dull moment.
I can see at least a part of where you get some of your energy from, Maria.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the bicultural and background that I come from has really served me well in understanding the worlds that I've navigated through. Not only have I been bicultural, I'm bilingual, English, Spanish, and comfortable moving between the two. But I also think when you have that upbringing, that bicultural upbringing, it opens a lens to really looking at a lot of different situations from multiple angles. So it gives you a different perspective, I think, overall. And you do well with change. You have to be able to adjust, right?
Yeah. No, I think it just, and it gives you a broader, and any problem or solution that's thrown at you, you have just, every time you travel, you go to a new country, you live there for a while, it just totally opens up your mind and how you look at the world and solve problems and think about things, right?
Have a very agile toolkit. And then professionally, as you mentioned earlier, I've had kind of a winding path, but always with purpose. I mean, I was an art major that fell into technology, right? And my most of my career was spent in the corporate world, beginning my career in technology, where I fell in love with the field when it was just an emerging field in so many ways. And I've run large organizations and P&Ls for the brands that you mentioned, all globally recognized brands, Xerox, Microsoft, and I was in telecom at one point with a company that is now underneath the fold of AT&T. So I had that perspective as well. So I was fortunate to serve all of them and to lead in significant business roles and lead significant businesses and initiatives for them. And then I moved into the not-for-profit sector as a CEO of two not-for-profits. When I came to the Girl Scouts, I did because it was the largest council in the world. It was serving 84,000 girls, or eventually we started with 95, but we had some reconciling issues that actually surfaced that we were 84,000. And to put that in perspective, at the time, Microsoft had 75,000 employees globally and 1,000 girls, right? Selling
Yeah.
cookies.
Yeah. And
And
good cookies at that. I mean, they're the best. Those thin mints are the best. I ate too many of them, but they're good.
we had like 24,000 volunteers. So it was a large organization. But the interesting thing about it for me was that it involved a merger of 7 corporations into one, which was something I knew I could do and I could do well. We had about 160 employees during the regular year, and then we went up to 400 during the summer. So it was a really meaty assignment as
Yeah.
transitioning from corporate into that. And then, as you mentioned, I became the CEO for Leadership Greater Chicago. So now I serve on several boards, both corporate and not-for-profit, and I'm actively involved in investing, especially in innovation and technology. And on the technology side, I continue to be very involved. So I serve on the board of P33, which was an organization, a not-for-profit that was founded by our former U.S. Secretary of Commerce, Penny Pritzker, and Chris Gladwin, an entrepreneur who has had, one of the largest exits in Chicago, and continues to be a serial entrepreneur in technology. And so with that organization, we focus on taking Chicago to a tier 1 technology city. And what that means is creating the workforce environment for technology, making sure that we don't lose our workforce that is coming out of our universities to the coasts, which has been a problem, right? And then, much like Angeles, investing in founders to make sure that the companies are born here, stay here, and create careers for people here. And then we also focus on the forefront of technologies. So we've been very involved with AI, and most recently superbly involved with quantum, where we very proudly announced a few months ago the creation of the quantum campus that is on the south side of Chicago, which puts Chicago on the map in an unbelievable way, nationally and internationally. So that development of the Quantech campus is just groundbreaking for Chicago, and I'm excited about it, as you can tell. But what ties all of this together in terms of my career and what I've done is my belief in really purpose-driven leadership and in opening doors, especially for people and communities that have been overlooked. And being part of this fund of Angeles is something that supports something near and dear to my heart. So Hispanics and founders and people who are innovative. So it's really personal to me to be able to support something that firsthand identifies much talent and creativity that exists in our communities, and that it brings home the fact that it's not just about writing checks, right? That you really have to get into changing the narratives and the systems and giving people an opportunity and really supporting a community of brilliant Hispanic creators in a way that is going to create not only innovation in the market, but is going to change the world in so many ways, right? So in this winding world of things that I've done, I've learned how to ask big questions, find patterns, and, decipher where the trends are going to be and help people scale. And that's why I love the work that we do here at Angeles.
Oh, well, thank you. Look, it's great. And Angeles is a great sponsor of this podcast, and really helping us get that message out. And there's a couple things that you mentioned that I thought was interesting. You said you were an art major, and the one thing that came to my mind was if you study the biography of Steve Jobs, I don't know, I don't think he was an art major. I don't think he even finished school. But the one thing that he fell in love with was calligraphy.
Mm.
And like just and the way he thinks about art and the beauty, and and there's something about the whole left brain right brain thing that really sparks innovation. So that was one. And then just maybe one sentence, or not, maybe a couple sentences on what is, people might be asking, what is Leadership Greater Chicago? What is that? Maybe just you can give a couple sentences on what that is.
So Leadership Greater Chicago was an organization that was founded in 1983, and the purpose of it was to look across a landscape of leaders at the civic level in Chicago that were coming up, and they were seeing a gap. So they created, so the Chicago Community Trust was the initial organization that helped to incubate and found Leadership Greater Chicago, which would have a purpose of identifying a cross-sector group of, at the time, 25 up and coming young leaders. And by young, I mean 25 to 40 something was the age at the time, to be the next leaders in Chicago. And out of them have come incredible people, people like Michelle Obama has gone through it, and Valerie Jarrett, and Arnie Duncan, and that's on the political side where people would recognize those names, but also a lot of CEOs have come from that. And so Leadership Greater Chicago has continued that mission since 1983. And I was brought in as CEO in 2014. And in 2019, I launched the Daniel Burnham Fellowship for C-suite and senior executives because I saw a gap in the C-suites. And in Chicago, if you're an executive at a particular level, if you're not participating civically, you stand out for not participating. Where in other you stand out because you're participating. Here, you stand out if you don't. So I felt it really necessary to refuel that, and it's been very successful. So that's what Leadership Greater Chicago is about.
Oh, excellent. No, and thank you for that. And Maria, just an excellent, amazing background, and still so many great things you can see ahead in terms of where you have going on. So, when we look at your background, you have just this cross sector of board experience, different industry experience, global experience, large P&L, and this corporate governance. How do you take that experience and bring it in the boardroom to help the boards that you serve on?
Sure. Apologies for that. I forgot to turn off my phone.
Oh, no worries.
How does cross-sector experience influence the approach to the board and board governance? Well, my cross-sector experience, which does go across corporate, not-for-profit, public-private partnerships and startups, has shaped a governance lens for me that's adaptive, that's strategic, and it's very much grounded in values, right? So in today's landscape, I think where change is constant, it's really complex. Complexity is the norm. Boards need to do more than just oversee. They really need to anticipate. They need to really be seeing over the corner, around the corner, because change is happening so quickly. It's important to bring that, that big awareness, right? Not just the awareness of your industry and your sector, but, really a global perspective, or an encompassing perspective. So for me, coming from both mission-driven and innovation-centric environments, I've learned to balance risk and purpose. And that's something that you do in the boardroom all the time, right? You're looking at where's a hockey puck going to be? Where should we be as an organization? And does that align with who we are, right? And stay close to who we are. So in not-for-profit governance, for example, that taught me how to align diverse stakeholders, and by diversity, I mean not just demographic, but thinking, right? Around long-term vision. While on the corporate and tech boards, you're really, you're looking at mission and values and all of that, but you're also looking at being acutely responsive to the market shifts and being agile in doing that, right? And that blend of those backgrounds gives me agility when advising on tech disruptions or regulatory headwinds or ethical dilemmas. And then I think the thing that also plays out in the boardroom from my background that I think is helpful is I was an operator. I bring an operator's mindset. So P&L is always top of mind for me. Having scaled organizations and navigated, many crises, I know how to ask the right questions, not just about performance, but about resilience and integrity. And particularly when we're looking at strategy, because I can look at a strategy and say, all right, is this strategy really a nice document that's just going to stay a document, or is it going to become a reality? Can it be executed against? Can it be implemented, right? And sometimes that's a miss, right? The strategy sounds great, the consultants leave, and nobody knows how to implement it, right? So I'm a strong believer that that's really important. And I think that when you bring cross-sector leaders together, or people who have had a cross-sector experience, they can often see around corners that others can't. It's more of a holistic governance approach. And that's really critical right now, particularly when you're looking at tech, where AI and cybersecurity and data ethics demand foresight, particularly ethics with AI is a challenging area. And so, accountability is going to continue to be something that boards are going to really need to think about in areas that they've never gone to before. So we need them to be more than just financially savvy. They need to be systems literate and also very societally aware, right? They need to be aware of what the shifts are in society right now.
Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah, and I think from a board perspective, it's things are changing fast, right? I mean, and I think you hit on all the major points, and they're vital in a world where you have a lot of this exponential growth going on, right? Changes in tech, cybersecurity, quantum, all these things that you talk about, and it's impacting every industry. I don't care what industry you're in, right? It's going to impact it one way or the other. So I think that perspective, Maria, that you bring is very valuable to the boards. So you've got some view into technology. You worked at one of the world's largest companies and technology companies in Microsoft, but also what you're doing at P33 and the great work there, the quantum, the leaders that you're exposed to. What do you see as the 2-3 biggest exponential trends that all of our listeners should be paying attention to from the lens that you have?
So I think in the landscape of technology, there are 3 areas that I would pay attention to. Certainly AI is on everybody's mind, particularly generative AI, machine learning in general, climate tech, and quantum. And let me spend a little bit of time on each one of them. I think that when it comes to AI, people are already seeing the transformation that's taking place in terms of productivity, personalization, decision-making across, all kinds of different sectors. I mean, we're experiencing agent bots, right, as consumers. So we're getting a firsthand look at how productivity is being enhanced by AI, just one-on-one, right? And generative AI in particular is democratizing access to a lot of tools that were once reserved for the few, right? So it's allowing small businesses to scale better, right? Because they're able to delegate to somebody, for example, what the staffer that they wouldn't have is able to do, right? So the AI, if you know how to use it, or AI in general, if you know how to use it, can become your assistant. And you can be a bigger business than what you are just by leveraging that as a tool, right? So, AI is really adding scale and adding capacity to areas that before would have required a lot of investment. And as a result, enabling entirely new business models. And those implications are pretty large on what makes innovation and governance essential and critical and exciting, at least to me.
Oh, yeah.
And if you look at climate, everybody's talking about climate, right? We know we're experiencing the change of climate every day. we walk outside and we go, gee, it didn't used to be like this X, Y, Z years ago, right? We know this, right? But when it comes to technology, we're seeing like extraordinary momentum in renewable energy and carbon capture and battery storage and agricultural technology, right? So the intersection of hardware, software, and sustainability is a really exciting area. This is an area where people, if they have an idea, they should investigate it because there's lots of room for innovation there. And one of the things that I find exciting about climate tech is that it's not just about doing good, it's also about economic value. And I learned firsthand when I went to Israel several years ago, and I became familiar with irrigation drip technology. And I don't know if you know what it is, but I'm going to explain it.
No, I don't. I was thinking, what the heck is that? I have maybe an idea, but I don't know what the hell it is. So no, please educate me.
Let me give you a little bit. Irrigation drip technology is the technology that takes water and is able to distribute it to the seedling very economically and in a very prescriptive manner. What happens to that seedling is that you can adjust the water drip to the plant as it's growing. What does that do? It does several things. One, it reduces the use of water. So you're being much smarter about using
efficient.
There's water in areas that might not have a lot of water available. The second thing is it can increase the yields of crops 3 to 5 times and even more. And we've seen that in Brazil with sugar cane plantations, right? What does that do to an economically depressed area? It immediately changes the value equation and the economic equation for them, right?
Right.
In terms of societal impact, it addresses food shortages, food scarcity, and being vulnerable to the fact that you don't have access to food. But it also conserves water and makes good use of areas where water is scarce. So the focus on climate tech is really exciting on being able to do good and doing well. And then last, quantum computing, right? And quantum is still a very new technology. It's still an unstable technology, in my opinion, right? And we're learning what quantum requires in terms of computer power, absorption of energy, cooling requirements, all of that, right? But it has the potential to break boundaries in fields like drug discovery and, potentially finding cures for diseases today that we are struggling with, cybersecurity. And once we cross certain technical thresholds, the implications for innovation and for progress are going to be profound. So I'm really excited about the role that quantum can play in solving problems that classical computing can't do today. And each area of these is going to shift things systemically, right? So I'm excited about quantum, but it's going to require energy, right? And right now that's something that the world at large is struggling with. We have old infrastructure in many places, or not access to energy. We had dismissed some areas of energy like nuclear. Well, nuclear is going to make a comeback. Just look at the fact that
Coming back. Oh yeah. I think is it Meta? I think Meta make a big investment in nuclear in Illinois. I think. I mean, but there's other places around the world, that around the U.S. that nuclear is coming back, and solar as well. So there's a big solar push, and I think I did a newsletter on but if you look at us compared to China and how much China has built out in terms of energy infrastructure, it's not. I have to pull up the graph, but it's like double. But like ours is like kind of flat in terms of energy capacity, and theirs is like been going up. And in a world of AI and exponential growth, right? It's going to be the limiting factor. We're trying to catch up, but we'll see. But it's a big deal.
Right. Yeah. So I think those are the 3 things to watch. And it's not a 10-year landscape anymore because technology is changing so quickly that in the blink of an eye, something else will come up.
No, look, this is why I'm doing the podcast, right? Because things are happening so fast how do you keep up? And this, I mean, you can read, but hopefully it's also listening to leaders like you who are kind of out there and seeing it and taking all those perspectives and pulling it together. There was a couple points when you mentioned in these technology curves. You said you can leverage AI to be your assistant, you can leverage AI to build your teams, all that kind of stuff. There's been a lot of talk about there will be, a $1 trillion company of just a handful of people, right? In terms of like the AI is going to give you the ability to create $1 trillion companies with just a handful of people, right? So that's one, and just really something. And actually, the bigger the companies, the more employees you have, almost start to be a liability than it is an asset, right? So, and you're starting to see a little bit of that starting to see a little bit more layoffs from Microsoft, from Amazon. And I think they're kind of, catching a little bit of the, trying to get out in front of it a little bit. So that was one of the and then the only other point on climate, we're our fund is looking at kind of called a climate AI tech deal. We'll see if it happens, but maybe by the time this podcast comes out, we'll see what happens. We'll be able to announce that. But it's big, and then how AI and stuff can help solve an industry problem around climate. So we're looking at that. Well, and then Maria, so leadership, you led Leadership Greater Chicago, all these different companies you led. In these times of exponential growth, what would you tell our listeners of how they should think about leadership, how they should lead? What's your philosophy on leadership that can help them be more successful?
Well, I think when it comes to leadership today, you have to remain an informed citizen, an informed leader. So it's important that you stay aware of just the 4 blocks that you live in or the building that you work in, right? So I think that it's imperative that a leader equip themselves with what's easily available, which is information, right? I also believe that it's critically important for leaders today to really become very used to leading through ambiguity. Ambiguity is only going to get, bigger and bigger. We've seen how the world can change just on a dime, right? COVID was something that came out of left field, and we all had to adjust to it. And we're continuing to adjust. We have governments that come in. We have a current government that's throwing all kinds of curveballs at businesses, and we have to adapt to that. So you have to be really able to move with agility and deal with ambiguity and lead during ambiguity with an ability to instill confidence in your people.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to be like nervous about things that are going on around them, and you have to be solidly planted to be able to lead, which means that you have to take care of yourself as a leader. So you can't burn yourself out. You've got to figure out how to take care of your health and your body and your family and all of that, right? And so from that perspective, there's no such thing as a balanced life, in my opinion. There's an integrated life, right?
Yeah.
So you integrate into your life as many things as you can so that you can get the things done that you need to get done between your job and your family and your spiritual practices or whatever it might be, right? So it's about continual alignment. We're like sailboats. We have to keep shifting our sails all the time. And to be a good leader, I think you have to be a really good sailor. You just have to be a really good sailor. And I think you have to have consistency and discipline. You can't, the world today is such a world that there's going to be a shiny object at every turn of the day. And you have to have the discipline to say, I'm not going to run toward the shiny object. I'm going to be thoughtful how I run this business. So vision is going to be really important, coupled with discipline. And then being able to be really proximate to your market and understanding what you need to know about that market or what you need to know about your organization to continue to lead it in a holistic way and a balanced way, in a way that gains the land that you need to acquire in your space, right? Market share, whatever it might be.
Exactly. No, that was great. And I wrote down something, as you were kind of mentioning those strong leadership principles. There's this whole concept of the 40-hour work week, and it's like, it's been, I'd say it's like almost of the industrial age and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's now we're moving into, it's not that it's got to be balanced, and you travel and you're flex and you're agile and and you have a team, so you have to have general kind of rules of when people kind of collaborate. But I think this whole 9 to 5 punching in and out, I think that's going to become more and more a relic, of the past. Especially with newer and, I think some of the old, call it the traditional industries, maybe a little tougher, but that was one of the things that, as and like, think about the school year education, right? It's like, you start in August ish and you go all the way to May and then you get the summer off. And that's a relic of like, the farming and agriculture and the agrarian society, right? Um, but learning should be like all year round, and I think now you should be doing it, all year in different ways. And I get it, you can have a summer and break and all that kind of stuff, but I think there'll be more flexible and more agile, call it times and stations of the year and all that kind of stuff. So, Maria, how people keep up with you on social media, and how would they find out how to be in touch with you, and any other last comments you want to share with the audience?
Well, LinkedIn is always good. I have to admit that over the last year or so, I've not been as present on LinkedIn as I will be. So stay tuned, because there's something coming.
All right.
So you'll begin to see my presence a little bit more. So LinkedIn is really good. I'm pretty accessible, so people can drop a note on LinkedIn and I'll message back, and I'll try to help in whichever way I can. But mostly, I think I remain pretty connected in this Chicagoland community. So I'm always out and about and present. So if you see me, just say hi and start a conversation with me.
Excellent. Excellent. Maria, pleasure having you on. Thank you. I know, you got so much going on, and thank you for taking the time to be on the podcast. Really appreciate it and look forward to seeing you around Chicago and other places.
Well,
Thank you.
Thanks for the invitation. It's been a pleasure.